Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Appreciate you jumping on. As always, do me a favor, hit that like and subscribe button. It definitely helps the channel. Today, we are going to talk about XRP's legal victory lap. The SEC drops appeal. What's happening next? Before we jump into that, let's take a look at pricing. Bitcoin sitting at 84,155, down slightly over the last 24 hours. Ethereum back under 2,000, sitting at 1,971. Tether moved back into the number 3 spot. That puts XRP at the number 4 spot. Of course, a lot of people expecting things out after the lawsuit dropped. And we did take a move up, but we are back down now to $2.42. And Solana is sitting at 127.48, down 4% over the last 24 hours. Listen, we all get hyped. The dropping of the SEC case versus Ripple was a great thing, and we were hoping for some, better movement in the right direction. But we still have to wait on liquidity to enter the market. That's really what we're depending on now, and that's cleaner today, so it should happen sooner rather than later, but it's still going to take some time. So be patient with your investments, and we will see what happens. But let's move over to X for some news. And first up here, I wanted to talk about Kenny Nugent here. Shout out to Kenny. He says, don't forget, we still have 13 XRP ETFs from 13 major financial institutions pending approval. This is a great point here because, of course, they are still pending. He says billions of dollars of inflow are coming for XRP. It doesn't matter if XRP is not part of the U.S. Strategic Reserve or will be stockpile reserve. One way or the other, we still win. I just wanted to highlight that because that's one of the things we're waiting for, right? We're waiting for the XRP ETF. That will bring actual liquidity. The end to the SEC case did not bring liquidity with it. It brought approval for institutions, basically. But of course, they've got to do their due diligence on their side, pilot programs, whatever they've got to do. But nonetheless, many believe it will come. So we want to celebrate Ripple's latest win against the SEC and explore its ripple effects on XRP's future. So it's official. The SEC throwing in the towel on its Ripple appeal. And you can see here this interview with Brad Garlinghouse. We're going to get to that in a minute. XRP's free at last, and the party's just getting started. I've got the scoop here from Ripple CEO and what it means for your wallet. Again, make sure you're subscribing. Yesterday, March 19th, Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse announces the SEC is abandoning its appeal. There were many posts on Ripple about this, and you can see his full remarks, which I shared yesterday. So check out that video. After years of fighting since 2020, this clears XRP as a non-security, crushing the last regulatory cloud. So the case is over. Now there's just what's going to happen to the $125 million fine, which Ripple is now in more control of. And we got to believe that those discussions have taken place already, and maybe the negotiations are still happening. We may not hear about the end of that for a few weeks, but the case itself is over. And this is a major positive and to be celebrated for Ripple and XRP holders. So this gives the opportunity for XRP to go mainstream with the institutions. With legal clarity, XRP ETFs could get fast-tracked. 13 filings are pending. We could see the approvals by Q3 of this year. So what's that going to do to price? Other analysts are saying $5 in the site is in sight in short term, with $10 plus if institutions pile in. So game on. So if you're an XRP holder, don't get shaken out. Don't get impatient. Stay with it. So let's give you some of this interview here It's a great interview, some great questions here with Brad Garlinghouse. And let me know some of your thoughts in the comments. Take a listen.
And of course, this has been a long battle. How much certainty does this provide? Is the entire case over?
So this provides a lot of certainty for Ripple, for frankly me personally, because the SEC had sued me. The SEC has abandoned their appeal. And so they filed suit in December of 2020. We won on the key parts of the case in the summer of 23. Judge Torres made a ruling that XRP in and of itself was not a security. That's almost a verbatim quote. The SEC filed an appeal about 8 months ago, and what they've now agreed is that they're going to drop that appeal. We still have a cross appeal pending, and so we go from being defendant really to plaintiff. So we now are in the driver's seat to determine how we want to proceed.
Are you dropping it?
We're going to see. It feels a lot better to be on the offense than the defense. You know, 4 years, we spent over $150 million defending that case, not just for Ripple, but for the whole industry. I think it was really important that this SEC, the Gensler SEC, was really trying to bully and continue lawfare, filing lawsuits and lawsuits and lawsuits against crypto companies. That's over now, and I think that's great for the U.S. crypto industry and, frankly, great for crypto at large.
I mean, to that end, if you're looking at a new SEC, why not drop the case at this point? Why not clear why not clear the water?
Well, that certainly is an option. I mean, again, it's clear the SEC has said, you know, I think in retrospect, never would have brought this case. The judge did rule in certain instances back in 2015 and 2016, some XRP sales that we sold to accredited investors, to institutions, that those had constituted a security. And so there was a $125 million fine that's sitting in escrow. We wouldn't mind having that back. That's on the table, and I think there's some nuances to how this will play out. But it was important for us, for really the whole XRP community, for them to know that the case is over. For all intents and purposes, the case is over. The SEC is no longer pursuing this.
But to that end, to your point here, the court decision had ordered you to pay a $125 million civil penalty for exactly what you're talking about. Is that $125 million paid? Is what you're saying that's still up for dispute?
Yeah. Well, it's not in dispute. I mean, that's sitting in an escrow, and depending upon whether or not we decide to continue with our appeal, we could walk away and the whole thing be done. On the other hand, when you have a case where there were no investor harm, no investors lost any money, you're kind of like, wait, why are we here? And it really goes back to Gary Gensler fighting a fight that was about power grab, that was about overreach of the bureaucracy to try to take a new industry. That what we're seeing now happen in Washington is smart legislation will come forward. You're seeing that happen with stable coins in real time. I think you'll have a market structure bill, is what it's described as, to provide clarity and rules for the SEC and CFTC.
We will look at the bigger picture. Right. We're going to have you for a little while this morning. But do you think that part of this means fighting it till the very end to make sure even that part of uncertainty around being sold to certain investors classifies as a security? Is that what you are fighting for ultimately at this point?
Well, I mean, at this point, all we're fighting for is, do we want to fight to get the $125 million back? And look, I'll be honest, would I have walked away from that before they appealed, before President Trump put Paul Atkins and Scott Bessent and David Sachs as critical, key, very smart leaders in this industry to bring this industry back on shore? I would have walked away. Now you look at that, you're like, this case in this SEC never would have been brought. And so where we find ourselves is, great, there's a clear legal victory to say XRP is not a security. That was good for the industry. But there's pieces of it that we think could be kind of cleaned up. And the question is, do we want to fight that fight, or can we come to an agreement with the SEC to drop everything?
The whole idea that this wouldn't have been brought under this SEC, have you had that specific discussion with Paul Atkins and with David Sachs?
Well, Paul Atkins hasn't yet been confirmed. He's a very knowledgeable guy about this industry and has been for a long time. But I've had conversations. I won't comment on specifics with certainly, I think David Sachs would agree that this is a case that didn't make a lot of sense in the beginning. Again, there was no investor harm. This was about Gary Gensler waging a war against this industry.
It's interesting. I want to also point out that the affiliated token, of course, XRP, has been up roughly 14%, now about 13% in the last 24 hours. One thing a lot of people had looked at, we're thinking a lot about how the administration is handling crypto assets, particularly outside of Bitcoin. Why do you think XRP wasn't specifically named in the executive order for the digital asset stockpile?
Well, so XRP was named by the president on Truth Social. He posted something saying that there should be other tokens, that there's going to be a Bitcoin strategic reserve and then a crypto stockpile that would include things like
But
XRP.
days later, the executive order didn't include it. Why was that?
I don't know what specifically was in the executive order. My understanding is there's going to be a Bitcoin strategic reserve. There'll be a crypto stockpile representing other cryptos. And I would expect that will include XRP. Look, at the end of the day, I think the stark contrast is in the Biden administration, we couldn't get a meeting with people at the White House. Now we're welcomed into the White House. And that's just a massive change. I think we want this industry to thrive in the United States. We don't want to push it offshore where you have fewer regulations.
I think the reason I keep pushing you too is because I think now it's widely accepted that this is a pro-crypto administration. But the details, that is what's causing an overhang, the uncertainty of the details. So to the extent you have confidence, right, about XRP being in that stockpile or otherwise getting more support for an ETF, for example, where does that confidence come from and what kind of timeline do you see it happening on?
So I have immense confidence on the ETF. I think there's 11 different filings pending with the SEC to launch ETFs, from everybody from Bitwise to Franklin Templeton and a whole bunch of people in between. I think those will be live in the second half of this year. We have seen, even outside the United States, you have live ETPs. And at a time when a lot of outflows are exiting some of the crypto ETFs, you're seeing inflows into XRP. And I think that's because you had this false negative pressure from the SEC, this kind of, an exogenous hand holding things down that's now being released. And that's great for the market. That's great for builders within the XRP ecosystem globally.
One more on the stockpile.
Yeah.
How much XRP would be in it? Where does it come from?
Well, my understanding of what I read about I think there are some questions, and that the devil may be in the details as Treasury implements some of this.
Absolutely in the details.
But my understanding is that the stockpile will be represented by seized other cryptos other than Bitcoin that then will be in that stockpile. So to the extent that various law enforcement agencies have seized cryptos, which would include XRP, that those would go into the stockpile in addition to the Bitcoin strategic reserve. That's my understanding.
There you have it. Great interview on Bloomberg Television with Brad Garlinghouse about the SEC case being over. So let me know what you think. So let me know what you think the price is going to be by the end of 2025 in the comments. Are you popping champagne about this case being over? What's your next move? Let me know your comments. You want every XRP when delivered fresh? I'm going to try to do that for you. Stay tuned, stay subscribed, and I will see you on the next one.